TV stations across the country are now broadcasting from living rooms, and they look a lot like YouTube circa 2007, even though I'm pretty sure that TV people used to make fun of YouTubers, and I know that because I was one of them. So today we're talking to my buddy who quit CNN, like I quit TV news myself, to go to YouTube. Stay tuned.
We are in Clearwater tonight. I'm Allison Morrow.
Hi, I'm Allison Morrow.
I'm Allison Morrow.
And I've gone to a lot of places.
On St. Pete Beach, Allison Morrow.
And now with my former Force Recon Marine husband, I'm going off-grid-ish.
Hey, Allison Morrow here. Thanks for watching. If you're new to the channel, I quit my TV news career back in 2019 to renovate an Airstream and move off-grid-ish with my husband. Another one of my peers and friends, Jennifer Moore, you see right here, from her sewing room, which is what she quit CNN for, to sew as a sewist. Right, Jen? That's what you told me. That's the new term, sewist.
That's the current PC appropriate term for people who sew, I guess.
I think my husband is a sew-ish. He's like a sew-ish. Sort of sews.
There's all kinds of terms coming up, but they don't like, a lot of people don't like seamstress. And also sewer. That's kind of, because it could be sewer.
Or
so
seeds.
That's a little...
Like a sower of seeds, too. That's kind of the way I look at it.
Yeah, I've heard all kinds of stuff. I like sewist. I'm fine with it.
Well, we don't want to offend you, so I will call you a sewist today. But you have done a lot of different jobs in news. You and I used to work together in Tampa, where you were on the assignment desk. You've been a producer. You worked at CNN. And then you quit to be on YouTube. Basically, you were sewing, essentially, and then you have a couple of other channels. So, I want to talk about like this movement of TV folks, specifically broadcasters, who weren't used to working remotely like a YouTuber, and now all of a sudden, because of this pandemic, are. My old coworker, Marc, he's an anchor at King 5, and you can see him. I think this is his office at home, but there he is. He is wearing pants. So if you ever thought that news anchors did not wear pants, you can see that Marc is in fact wearing pants. Samantha Guthrie, it turns out, is now also anchoring from home because she's concerned that she may be sick with the coronavirus. Who knows? She has a sore throat. So they have figured out a way to set up the Today Show at her house. And then this is the Greg Gutfeld Show on Fox News Channel, and you see they have 5 people all in different spots, which we're trying to figure out, like, most of them seem to have a green screen, which is available to YouTubers.
We don't know how long this thing's going to last. If this is at least a month or so, I think these stations need to at least invest in, like, at least a light for these people. If it's more long-term, I think they need to buckle down and drop a few bucks in some technology for these people, because you're going to have all these YouTubers showing these. I mean, their YouTuber setups look 10 times better than anything I've seen from local or national outlets having anchors and reporters at home, which is a little sad, but again, it just shows you. I think when I was going into YouTube, there's just a lot that you have a bit of an arrogance about. You're like, this will be really easy for me. No big deal, piece of cake. But when you get into it, you realize that there's a lot of cogs in the wheel, and everything I learned from TV newsrooms, I kind of had to like reteach myself because I was doing the wrong thing for YouTube.
I know for me, I pitched this idea like, I don't know, 8 or 9 months ago to my news managers because I saw the value in what was happening on YouTube and thought, hey, this would also match up with the lifestyle that I want, which is more remote, like going off grid-ish and living in the Airstream. Like, why do I have to give up my mainstream broadcast journalism career just because I don't necessarily want to fit that sort of mainstream conventional technology mode? Now all of a sudden everybody's doing it, even though they thought I was totally crazy for that. So curious, like when you made that decision, what was going through your head? Because it definitely was not conventional back then.
A lot of our TV peers, they still don't understand YouTube. They don't know how to make money on it. They still think we're a little crazy, which is fine. But now I'm like, welcome to my world, because now everyone is sort of forced into this situation where you have to almost act like a YouTuber. But I quit my job in 2017, and a lot of I think people are like, what is she doing? But there's a few misconceptions about working in TV news, and one of them is that you make lots of money. And the truth is that most people in newsrooms do not make a lot of money. So when I started making any sort of significant income off of YouTube, we were in a position where I could walk away and it wasn't that risky. So I decided to take the plunge because I figured if I don't do this now, I'm never going to do it. So that's why I decided to make the move. Plus, I kind of saw the business clear. I think for anyone who's working in TV news, to be blind to the fact that people are just not watching as much TV is a little bit ignorant, because that's what's happening. People are not watching as much TV. They're on the internet more. People are watching YouTube far more than they are watching traditional broadcast TV. So I really wanted to go in the direction where people were headed and not where people were going from.
Yeah, and I mean, obviously, I think a lot of that has developed, like with our mobile devices and everything. For instance, I know that in 2007, when I graduated from my master's program in Boston, my mom for Christmas that year gave me this little blue camera that said upload directly to YouTube. And back then I was like, I want to be a professional journalist, Mom. I would never do YouTube. Like, only people who do crazy cat videos and armpit music are on YouTube. And I took this other route. And now I'm thinking, what was wrong with me? Like, if I had gotten on YouTube back then, man, I mean, I would be like,
I feel the same way.
So, and it's easy to have that kind of bias wherever you are. Like, you think that wherever you are now is going to last forever. Or if you're in kind of one of those big guy, big gal realms of the world, like you're the big conventional person now, that doesn't mean anything won't change later. And like, of course, it doesn't necessarily take a global pandemic, but in this case, like, you can see how quickly, I mean, really they changed everything within like a week or two. Curious, like, tell us a little bit about when you made the decision, like, were your peers like I looked at YouTube back in the day? I mean, did people think you were nuts for doing it? And have you heard any of them change their tune now? Or do you feel like people still kind of like, we're going to go back to the old way anyway. YouTube can still be for cat videos and armpit music.
Yeah, I don't know if they think YouTube is a fad or something. I would heavily disagree with that statement. And I think when I first got into YouTube, I think there's a really... I think TV people who look at YouTube and they don't understand it, in order to be successful on YouTube, you really need to understand the platform, and it's much different than your broadcast audience. People who watch YouTube want something different. They don't want polish. They don't want someone in a suit that talks like an anchor. They want someone who talks like them, who might dress like we are now, wearing like t-shirts and stuff, and just kind of shoot the shit with them. They don't want they don't necessarily want this clean cut, wholesome image. They want to watch edgier people. They want to watch the Joe Rogans of the world. They want to watch Jeffree Star. In fact, a lot of the bigger news channels, they are nothing like your traditional news outlets, like the Philip DeFrancos of the world, the Tim Pools. There's a few, like the Young Turks. Again, they do things differently. And that's what, especially younger audiences, they're really looking for a source that they feel like doesn't have any corporate ties. I mean, most TV stations are owned by a corporation. So let's get that straight. And I think I was thinking about this earlier too, is when we were working in TV newsrooms, we couldn't just do whatever we wanted. Like, we had to get our stories approved by management. It's not like you could just do your own thing working in a TV newsroom. There's not a lot of freedom in there, and I think that's something that, if for everyone watching that still works in a newsroom, there's so much creative and editorial freedom once you get out of the newsroom. There's not a lot of red tape on YouTube. Again, we'll get into this later. There are certainly some negatives about YouTube, and there's some things that you're going through now, like with all the demonetization stuff. But overall, far and away, YouTube, I believe, is a much better platform for airing your ideas, for airing your creativity, and being able to produce the kind of material that you want.
Yeah, I mean, maybe part of it that people are worried about is that there is a little bit of risk with the reward, in that when you start to put yourself out there like this and you're talking for 20 minutes versus 2 minutes or 90 seconds, which is what you get in TV, and really you're not talking for the 90 seconds, you're just, he said this, she said that, and you just throw it on and have like 4 hours to put it together. Well, when you put yourself out there in YouTube, like, for me, I mean, it is definitely one of those things where, like you like you said, people want a different kind of vulnerability, really. They want to know more about you. They want to feel like they're connected to you. They want you to talk like a real human being. And in a lot of cases, they want you to cut through the BS and just like tell it like it is and be yourself. And maybe in some cases, give them some feedback on what you're thinking. And I think that does kind of come sort of as, I don't know, just not what you would typically be doing if you're in a newsroom. Now, that said, I'm sure that people can come up with plenty of criticism of bias and non-objectivity in the mainstream world. So it's not like just because you are there, you're like somehow a robot. I mean, there's plenty of cases, like I've done videos on my own channel about that. So I don't know. I mean, I think maybe that's where, like, when I first got into it, I sort of struggled with, because I do think you're totally right that, like, the presentation style is so different. And if you are still thinking you're trying to be like this blank screen news reporter, it doesn't really work as well on YouTube.
Does not translate at all. And I see a lot of stations do that, and even networks, is all they do for their YouTube channel is they just throw up news packages. And that format is terrible for YouTube. If they really want to grow, and I've seen very few outlets do it well on social media, that didn't originate from social media. Again, you've got the BuzzFeeds, you've got like the HuffPo, the Young Turks, Philip DeFranco's. They're doing okay because they started out on social media. But for like the more traditional establishment media, I've seen very few newsrooms do social media exceptionally well. And I feel like I'm like, really? Like, you can't figure this out? There's so many resources out there to figure out these platforms. There's really no excuse for you not to try.
Because the learning curve can be so steep. And you didn't have a shooting background. Like, for me, when I was in news in 2008, which is basically right about when I started, I had a job that I got in 2007, but I only stayed in that position for a few months. I transferred to this medium-sized market in Knoxville. 2008 recession hits. All of a sudden, they tell us, guess what? You have to learn how to shoot and edit your own video, because we want to double the size of the newsroom without hiring anybody, which means splitting the photographers and the reporters. Photographers are now going to have to learn how to write. Reporters are going to have to learn how to shoot. Everybody was like, what? We have to do that, and especially in union markets like in Seattle, when I came here in 2013, it was still very separate. I was the first solo video journalist for my station, and the second in the entire market out here, because everybody was basically forced into these specific roles, which hadn't followed, well, not even the trend in the mainstream world across the country, where people had been shooting and going on TV and doing their hair and makeup and the behind the scenes work at the same time. But especially as YouTube was getting bigger, all these YouTubers know how to shoot and edit and do everything on their own. I mean, in some cases, they're way better shooters than even some of the photojournalists in mainstream news. So I was forced to learn that. And honestly, like, at first I thought, okay, well, I'll get out of this, and then eventually I'll get my bigger city job and I won't have to shoot again. But like, everywhere I went, they were like, sorry, you shoot your own stuff. Eventually, it gave me the opportunity to do stories that otherwise no one else was really getting to go do if they were a two-person crew. Because if you had the very rare two-person crew, those people were doing the breaking news, fires, murders. They had to do the live shots. They were staying at work till 7:30 at night. I could go watch sunflowers grow if I wanted to, and jump out of them and, do whatever really I want, animal stories and stuff like that, because they were only losing one person. So they're like, oh, well, just send Allison, you could do fun stuff. That's when I realized maybe there's an advantage to having this technical skill set that gives you a lot more freedom and independence. And I'm glad for it now, because that set me up to have my own production company on the side when I quit TV, and to be a better person on YouTube.
I interned at 3 different TV stations, and lucky for me, I learned to do some things. I learned to edit on tape-to-tape machines. I would pull scripts from a dot matrix printer as an intern, and over time, I became a pretty good writer. So for most of my career, I was a producer, and I produced a lot of packages. So I was very good at package writing. I was a pretty decent editor, but I couldn't shoot. So shooting is something I've had to teach myself, and I don't understand the people that are like, oh, I don't know how to shoot. Well, it's like, you could just learn how to shoot. I mean, it's not that hard. You can shoot if you have a phone, shoot on a phone. But I feel like in 2020, we have no excuse not to do something, because there are resources, free resources, that we can learn to do anything we want. So since I quit CNN, and for the record, I didn't write packages at CNN. I did not shoot or edit at CNN. So the creative part at CNN was pretty limited. So I did that all on my own, and over time, you just kind of figure it out. I've become a much better editor. I've become a much better shooter. I've become better at all the technical stuff. Like you and I, we're figuring out how to set up all these live shots. I did a 24-hour live stream and figured it all technically. There were a lot of lessons to be learned. What do you think the percentages of on-air talent who can shoot and edit? Like, if you had to guess.
Honestly, depends on the market. The smaller markets,
Like, overall, like, including network and local people. What would you say?
Network and local people? Network is like
Network and
very
local.
minimal. Very
Yeah, like,
minimal.
nobody knows how to shoot
No.
there.
And then there are like maybe a handful. And then local people, I would say almost all of the reporters at this point in time have some ability to shoot. Maybe they're not great at editing yet, but they are expected to go out even with their cell phone now and do a press conference or something. Seattle was an odd market, I would say. If I were to take Seattle as an example, because Seattle was one of the last to transition to this, we had like 3 people that had started 20 years ago, and so they were still working with a photographer, but even one of them I remember was going to the mayor's press conferences alone and holding his cell phone up. So that was like 3 people of the whole newsroom. So I would say like now more and more the real transition is going to be the anchors, the people who are paid, the bigger bucks and sit in the studio. The bigger bucks. Exactly. But you know what I saw that was really interesting when I was covering the Rio Olympics was that the anchors, a lot of cases, are the ones that these corporations that own the TV companies want to send because the anchors have a bigger following. They have much more name recognition, but they don't want to waste sending extra people to do all these jobs. So they want the anchors to be able to do their shooting and editing and fast, not like you get 3 days. Like I was producing 2 things a day at the Olympics. I mean, those were 14, 15, 16-hour days. And so you had to know how to churn a lot of material. And so the anchors they were choosing who were going down there were anchors who were holding a camera. And like, yeah, they kind of had the anchor hair and use a lot of hairspray, but they still had these tiny little cameras because like you said, nowadays there's no excuse. I mean, the technology is following that trend. Like the cameras can be really small and compact. You're not carrying these huge war-sized cameras that people were used to take, to Desert Storm. They're like this big, and frankly, lots of people can shoot on their cell phones anyway now. So, I mean, when I hear, and I still do, hear people in the industry complain about having to do the behind the scenes stuff, besides the fact that I think it's totally snobby and it demeans what a photojournalist does. Like, it's like, I don't do that, I'm on camera. Well, like what it's like they're the blue collar and you're the white collar worker. I really hate that distinction anyway. But it's also like, dude, I have no sympathy for you. Like, this is where the market's going, get with it. And some people will complain it's harder to do your job. And it is. There, in a lot of cases, it's harder to be a journalist who would be reading and researching and doing all the stuff that the reporter would do behind the scenes, like in the car. Even just think about that. You're in the passenger seat if you're working with a photojournalist. And so you can read, you can make phone calls, you can take notes, you can understand the topic.
Well, they do the driving.
Yeah, well, they do. Yeah, they're like your chauffeur. And in this case now, I'm the person that's always driving. So how do I understand what's going on? And when I turned into an environmental reporter, the environment is a very complex area to cover. How do you do that? I will say there is a lot of frustration there, which is in part why I started thinking, hey, maybe I belong on a venue like YouTube because I can take a little bit longer. The production is so different. Like, I remember watching a Tim Poole video recently about this. If you guys don't know Tim Poole, he's an independent journalist, used to work for Vice, and now has like a huge following on YouTube.
Allison and I are the fan
huge
club.
Fan club. We all have beanies at home. We pretend to be Tim for Halloween. But check him out because does basically commentary on a lot of news pieces now. That's sort of what he's transitioned into. And he was talking about how this is going to shift and change because someone like him can produce a 20-minute video for like no dollars.
Tim Poole, he has, I think, combined about 1 million subscribers. He pumps out 7 videos a day at least, and the production quality, it's decent, but it's not insanely expensive. It probably did not cost him that much money, and he's raking in the dough now. So I mean, I can't blame the guy.
Yeah, and he made this point in the video that I'm talking about that for what people expect to see on TV and what a TV station expects itself to present to the public, a 20-minute video would cost tens of thousands of dollars with the salaries of the people producing it, the time that it would take to put it together. Like, he's just showing you an article or something that he's dug up and he's talking about it, and people are getting just as much, if not more, value from that as they would if they watch this very highly produced like Dateline series where there's all kinds of crazy editing. And not that there isn't a time and place where like we all love going to the movies. Like I love Lord of the Rings. I like Dateline. I mean, I can enjoy that, but it just goes to show that like you can have a guy like Tim who's got a really low cost production and he's going to survive, especially in a time where people are listening more than they're necessarily watching. So I can put him on in the car or go for a run. I don't have to watch everything that's going on, and I can listen to something for 20 minutes, where the TV stations have a really hard time getting people to pay attention to something for 20 minutes. And the reason is because you can't get somebody necessarily to stare at a screen for 20 minutes anymore on a regular basis, but you can have somebody listen for 20 minutes because people are in the car doing something else. And so that's starting to make a lot more sense. So now all of a sudden, like, you're seeing this shift, and where is this industry going to go, especially with something like this coronavirus? I don't know, but I do think it changes things.
YouTube and these social media platforms, they're very personality driven, which is something that most news stations are not. They may have a couple main anchors, but again, when you go to like Philip DeFranco's channel, you're watching for Philip DeFranco. You don't necessarily care about the content. You're watching for the person. And I think that's something that YouTubers have really got down to a science, especially like the vloggers or the, like, you know, again, I hate to say it, but like the Logan Pauls of the world, they've got to figure it out. So, I mean, I remember a few years ago when I was in the CNN newsroom asking an older colleague who was a manager, and I was telling him about Philip DeFranco, and this guy's response was, well, yeah, but he's not doing anything original. He's just taking stuff other people have done and then, you know, and then kind of spinning it. I'm like, yeah, but people are watching him more than they're watching even CNN or any other network. Like, look at the numbers, and people are watching these YouTubers much more than they are watching CNN in an airport.
Yeah, you definitely can't or shouldn't write them off as irrelevant. Even if you say, well, maybe the stuff I want to do is I want to spend 6 months investigating something and put out a 15-minute long investigative piece or whatever, that's fine. I mean, I have a lot of good friends that are doing investigative journalism, and I actually find their stuff to be far more helpful than and relevant to, like, especially local newsrooms, than a lot of the stuff that I see on like national news or even like other local news reports. Because like investigative reporters, like, I really appreciate what they bring to the table. And theirs is always enterprise original material. That said, like, there's 6 million people watching Joe Rogan. So, you know, what you have to take those people seriously. Now, maybe it's like a totally different genre, and so you feel like you're not competing with them. But for somebody to just totally write them off and like not even want to figure out what they're doing that is so attractive to the public, I think is a huge miss. I'm curious if this time and place changes that. Part of me feels like it doesn't. But I guess it just depends on the necessity of it all, because I really think that's the only thing that changes things.
I don't think a lot of the establishment media folks are going to wake up and smell the coffee. Like, I just don't. They still are. I think a lot of people in the industry are still stuck in the ways and stuck in their old ways, and they don't want to. They don't want to try to figure this out. If I was working in a newsroom, or if I was a newsroom manager, I would make it mandatory that all of the newsroom staff know who like the top 50 to 100 YouTubers are. Like, whenever you see somebody, like when the Logan Paul thing happened with the whole Suicide Forest thing, you saw people in newsrooms who had never heard of him before. They're just Googling him to write the story. But they didn't. It's hard to report on something when you're not familiar with the context. You don't know, you're not familiar with the material. And to me, it's very obvious in the reporting whether the person who wrote it and produced it, whether they were familiar with that person or whether they're just like faking this, you know, faking their knowledge of it. And I see a lot of that going on too, where when they report on YouTube, it's obvious that they're so out of touch with the community, and the YouTubers know it. Like, they definitely see BS when it's BS. And then they just light up the comment section with bad comments. I think these news outlets should pay attention to that.
Yeah, and I think it's because to do their research on the YouTubers, they just read other mainstream reports.
Yeah, they read other articles about the YouTuber, but they don't actually look at the like, another example is PewDiePie. He is the most subscribed channel on YouTube. he's huge. He's very politically incorrect. He's not, he's not very family friendly. So when he had a few controversies, it was just so clear to me that the reporting on it was just so, it was very taken out of context. It was not, I mean, this guy is like a comedian, and they were acting like everything he did was done in seriousness. And I'm like, no, that's not what it is. He just does stuff that's crazy. Like, that's his usual thing. Or when Elon Musk was on Joe Rogan,
right,
all the headlines were, Elon Musk lights up a joint with Joe Rogan. I'm like, Joe Rogan does it with like a lot of guests. Yeah. So like they were acting like it was like this new thing. And I'm like, no, if you've seen like even 5 minutes of Joe Rogan, you get that he's not the first guest that's happened with. So to miss that context is really missing the bigger picture there. And I think a lot of journalists could do much better when reporting on the digital community, because the digital community is not going to take them seriously if they don't feel like they know what's going on.
Yeah, and just like the fact that anyone cares that Joe Rogan and Elon Musk smoked a joint. Like, no one watching YouTube probably cared at all. It was like not news whatsoever. And I think probably that thing that caught my attention from that whole conversation was how Elon Musk basically thinks the world is going to be taken over by AI within like the next decade, and the Terminators are going to run the world, so that if you're worried about a global virus right now, you can just, buckle in and get ready for Jurassic Park 2020 version or 2030.
I hope I'm dead by then.
Yeah. So, yeah, the joint thing, like, I think most people watching probably didn't even think about that being news. And then all of a sudden, it's not just news, but it causes Elon Musk to resign or something. Like, didn't that turn into just a big
I think
hoopla?
the stock, what was it? The stock, something with the stock dropping or something like that. But it was so stupid. Another example too was I watch a podcast called the H3 podcast. It's a pretty edgy channel, and they had Papa John, from Papa John's Pizza on the podcast, and that was a huge deal. But there was so much going on surrounding them getting Papa John, where if you didn't pay attention to the channel to begin with, you wouldn't realize why it was such a big moment in internet history. And it was, because that was like a long time meme on that podcast was Ethan, the host of H3, calls himself Papa, and he says, Papa bless. So they started the thing with Papa John because his name was also Papa. So they would always talk about Papa John. They reported on the Papa John controversy. So for them to actually get that guest was like just huge. So like that actually was a big deal. You didn't see any headlines about that. No. But yet you get Elon Musk smoking pot on Joe Rogan.
Yeah, and like to that point, because there was so much controversy around Papa John's, and that was a reflection of the fact that YouTubers will have conversations that mainstreamers will not. And so if you want to know what's happening with free speech or all kinds of controversial topics right now that like are just untouchable in mainstream media because everybody's too worried about the mobocracy, the offended folks, you got to go to YouTube to find those conversations. And I realized that like a lot of the folks I knew in the mainstream world were not interested in just how important the conversations happening on YouTube are right now that are not happening in their world. The whole free speech and censorship deal, platform versus publisher, and whether YouTube or Twitter or Facebook should have the right and ability to escape libel lawsuits, for instance, like they get to be seen as the platform, so they're free of a lot of the restrictions that a publisher would have, but yet they get to come in and control and shadow ban and kick people out, like really important voices just getting kicked out. I mean, the mainstream world went crazy over Jim Acosta losing his White House press pass, but then you have these huge YouTubers or people, other folks on social media who have a huge following who are doing some important work for these conversations, love them or hate them, and they just get smoked. Like just out of nowhere, but nobody cares about that. I mean, it's like Jim Acosta still had his job. He still had the ability to talk to people, but the internet now and these big tech companies can literally just silence somebody just with no warning. And I think that's a conversation that anyone who's interested in journalism, who calls themselves a journalist, wherever you are, living room or in a studio in New York City, should be talking about, at least should be caring enough to know what's going on.
As much as I love YouTube, and overall I think it's still the best platform for video, clearly YouTube has problems. The copyright crackdown, it can be a little bit insane. In fact, and YouTube doesn't recognize fair use of material. So say you have a 5-hour long video and you use 2 seconds of some other material, that copyright holder can claim the entire 5-hour video. Mm-hmm. And I feel like YouTube has a lot to figure out along those fronts. Their AI cannot detect copyright infringement versus fair using material. And again, fair use isn't like a blanket thing, but at the same time, it's a little ridiculous when you using 2 seconds of material means your entire video is blocked worldwide,
right?
Which has happened to quite a few YouTubers of all like walks of life, all niches. So it's not just something that happens to a certain group of people. Like I had a video demonetized, and you've had some videos demonetized. I did one that was I did sort of a funny video for my sewing channel that combined the Bird Box challenge and the Marie Kondo challenge, you know, that KonMari thing. Again, it was a totally innocuous video. I was folding laundry blindfolded. It was not anything dangerous. It was not anything inappropriate. Got demonetized. I did the manual review, still yellow. And again, no swearing. I'm wearing all my clothes. So you could have situations where there's a lot of false flags with your material getting claimed or getting flagged for something that, you know, it's not a perfect system. Again, I love YouTube, and I think there's still no better game in town for video. But it does have there's always some frustrations within the community of certain policies that are currently taking place.
Maybe they thought you were taken hostage by your laundry and it was potential for violence or...
Yeah, I don't know. Like, again, I'm blindfolded. I'm sitting in a chair. Like, so it's not like I could even fall. And I think they were demonetizing some of the videos because people were trying to, like, drive blindfolded. I think sitting in a chair folding laundry is pretty harmless. But who knows?
That's the point. I mean, it's like, people are really quick to jump on the censorship bandwagon when it's something really, really obvious. But the problem is, like, when you go for it in one case, now you've opened up Pandora's box for it in every case. And then who gets to decide what is dangerous or what is not? Like, you brought up my videos. I mean, I did this video with my dad, who's a surgeon, about using hydrogen peroxide instead of conventional disinfectant wipes because of the toxins that are in those wipes, and switching to natural cleaners. And YouTube, for whatever reason, is considering that against its ad suitability community guideline policy for what? I mean, is the authority Clorox, or is the authority, like, I mean, the CDC says hydrogen peroxide is safe. I mean,
maybe Clorox is a sponsor.
I mean, this is the thing though, like, you just don't know. And so it really does, like, beg the question of, like, at the very least, people need to be aware, just like they are when watching mainstream corporate news, that there are corporations behind YouTube and these other social media outlets, and you got to be a good consumer of whatever the information is you're getting. I always say, like, I really do not get into a lot of emotional debates over politics or issues at all anymore, because my level of confidence of, like, the information I'm able to get about this stuff is, I just don't have the sense that, like, I'm getting everything that's possibly out there, so I want to go to the mat with someone and beat them up over it, or, like, break up with my husband, you know, like, divorce them over who they voted for, or any of that stuff, because it's just become more and more apparent to me that it is very difficult in today's world to find, like, pure free speech that's not in some way censored or diluted by bias or whatever else. And you have to do a lot of research to make sure that you kind of know what you're talking about. And I think, unfortunately, a lot of people are the opposite. They know very little. They think this free flow of communication and free speech is great right now, and no issues whatsoever. And then they get in these super emotional, like, to the death fights with people on social media. And I'm like, guys, come on. Like, do you really know that to be true? I mean, really? Do you know that to be true? Or is that just, like, what the algorithm has given to you on your social media site? And then now and
all these conversations are happening on Facebook, by the way.
True.
Oh, geez. I'm not sure. Yeah, that's why I like TikTok, because TikTok is still a free-for-all where you can pretty much do what you want.
Right.
So I'm sure that will also be spoiled at some point. But for now, I am loving the free-for-all that is TikTok.
Yes. I'm trying to get my TikTok going too, but I'm starting to try to figure out, like, do people like the horse videos, the dog videos? Like, it's so random. Like, one video will get 160,000 views and another gets like 100. Like, who knows? But maybe that just goes to show there is some kind of organic reach still left there, because there isn't like a rhyme or reason to it. It's very erratic.
What I like about TikTok is that you can still get a lot of views on something even if you don't already have a big following. So it still seems very possible. And I gotta say too, if you're a journalist out there and you're not on TikTok, you need to start getting on it. Like, I don't understand why people are so afraid of new things. You're gonna have to figure out at some point, and even if that platform goes kaput, it'll teach you something. You know, Snapchat was very much like TikTok. So all the time I spent on Snapchat, I feel like it translates over to TikTok. And I think YouTube, again, and also if you're starting a YouTube channel in 2020, man, like, TV people, where were you 10 years ago?
Right.
Like, that's what I want to know. Like, YouTube is, you know, a lot of the people that are huge on YouTube now, they've been doing YouTube since like 2007, 2008.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
It's not going anywhere.
Well, and the thing too, like with these sites, is that it really does give you, like you've learned, an alternative to your job, so that like it's protection in the sense of like you said, it could be something else and you gain the skills or whatever, but like whatever it is, these new skill sets you're learning, like I was hesitant to learn in 2008, but then ended up being a job security for me, is like, why wouldn't you want to be applicable to a larger, wider audience and have more resilience, because you just have more variability and more job security because you have your fingers in different pies. I mean, I just don't understand that.
Well, like you and I have both looked at, there's a news reporter in Ohio named Clancy Burke, and we both checked out her channel. Let me see how many subs this girl has like a lot of subs, and she had them before she got into TV news. There's no doubt in my mind that helped her get that job. Yeah. Because the station was like, holy crap, she has over 100,000 subscribers on YouTube.
Right.
Clearly this woman knows how to build an audience, and also that those followers may follow her over to the newscast. The other thing I don't understand is it does really bother me that so many on-air people are not allowed to maintain some sort of social media that they own. Like, a lot of TV news people we know, they're not allowed to do a YouTube channel, and I don't understand why stations maintain that much ownership over someone's individual brand like that. Yeah, I mean, it would help the station if they were allowed to have a channel and they could build it again. I know they've got the morality clauses, but if your anchor, like, what is her name, Dominique Sachet or whatever, she's got over 1 million subs. No doubt that is more helping the station than it's helping their YouTube channel. Right. So that's something I think TV stations need to get on board more, is to, again, let these people have a presence on YouTube. Let them vlog in the newsroom. Yeah, and do things like that to really connect with people.
I think that all probably in the contracts is so archaic and from long before YouTube or social media was so important to the way that people communicate, because the idea originally was, we don't want you to take money from anybody else because that implicates your ethics. We want you to only get paid by us. But the problem is, like, well, I mean, once you grow a channel and you have this audience, I mean, what incentive is it for a reporter to even do this extra stuff if you're going to either seize it when they're done? Because I've heard people say they have to sign over their accounts, which, by the way, what use is a social media account to a TV station or some other outlet
without the
person? Yeah, it's totally meaningless. Like, it does. And then also, why can't you see that as an asset, like just like the ability to shoot or edit, like having that kind of following is an asset to this person and a skill set that they're going to take with them when they leave. But you know what? You could always keep them happy and then they stay. That's the crazy thing.
Right?
Like, why not? Instead of looking at
ready to have your
reporters
socks
like prisoners.
knocked off. All right, guess how many subs Clancy Burke has now?
I'm going to guess she's got 570.
You're close. When we checked in, I think she had 200 something. Oh. She's got 454,000.
Oh, dang, wow.
She's doubled her sub count in the last year. I mean, she's killing it. And her station, she must have worked out something with them. She vlogs at work. And again, that her stage, she works in a very small market in Ohio. No doubt that's helping the station more than it is helping her. Like, by having them featured to an audience, that's got to be more than the total demo in that market size, too.
Yeah, she's obviously got good managers who see the value of that. We had a few people at my last station who were kind of like subtly and slowly getting into that, and we were trying to figure out, like, how was this going to work? Could they monetize if they got enough followers? You know, if the guy who was in promotions and marketing, he grew a channel based on Orange Theory, just going to Orange Theory and doing exercises in Orange Theory. And he's got a decent following now, like from somebody who just started at zero. But they weren't as worried about him as somebody like me or my coworker Jake, who was an anchor, because it's like, okay, now what's happening? And I do think there's probably going to be stuff put in contracts eventually specifically related to social media, because here's where it gets tricky. All of us had these non-competes. So like, they don't want you to leave and take your audience to their competitor. Well, competitors used to be seen as the other mainstream stations within that DMA. So the CBS station or the ABC station, those are your competitors. Nobody saw YouTube or Facebook as a competitor to what you're doing. Now that everybody does everything, TV stations do social media, print places do video, everybody's kind of in each other's world. I think we'll see in the next 5 years, I believe we'll see these contracts try to jump on that. And that way they're trying to basically prevent you from using your paycheck there or their platform to grow your audience and then be like, peace, I'm out of here. The way I think they should be looking at it is like, hey, encourage these people to grow their platform and then keep them happy, you know, instead of like looking at it like a marriage where you're just like, hey, honey, you know, you signed that
You're
certificate.
just looking at it. Yeah, when you're just looking in it, what's in it for you?
Yeah, exactly.
Like that whole attitude. The first 2 TV news jobs I had were under contract. I was only a producer and I couldn't even have a YouTube channel. It was in the contract. I was not on air, which I thought was pretty weird. Again, I did not have a public face at the station, but if I had started a YouTube channel while working at Station X, I could have gotten fired. So I mean, that's messed up too.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I will say one good thing about CNN was that they were totally cool with the YouTube channel as long as it didn't conflict with what I was doing there, which was, again, I didn't have a news channel, so it was not a problem. They knew about it, but I think CNN, weirdly for a network, they had a lot more leeway in you doing other things with your time and with your talents too.
You just couldn't.
So you could have a side business.
You couldn't talk about CNN though, right? Like you had.
No, I couldn't talk about CNN until after I quit.
Okay.
So now that I'm no longer an employee, I don't represent the company, but while working at CNN, like I couldn't talk about it on the channel or talk about my job really. So
got it.
But it wasn't really a problem.
Yeah, because you were a sewist. So
I was sewing channels. Yeah. So
all right, Jen, can you tell everybody where they can find you on all these new platforms and not on CNN? Where can people look up your channel?
I have 3 YouTube channels. I've got the Sewing Report, which is my bigger YouTube channel. I do one for fun that's called Jen Talks Forever. That's just kind of silly stuff.
And she
or
can.
me talking about like finance.
She can.
I talk a lot about money and real estate and stuff like that. I'm real big on personal finance, so that's something I like to do there. And then I have another channel that kind of didn't really do too well, so that's sort of on the back burner. That's called X TV Producer. Again, people apparently don't really care about learning about news backgrounds on YouTube, I guess. But the sewing channel has been doing pretty well. I'm trying to get on TikTok. I'm at Sewing Room on TikTok. And I'm at Florida Jen. That I have a personal TikTok where I just do stupid stuff.
Well, thanks again for watching, everybody. Again, I'm Allison Morrow. You can find me on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, as Jen said. Share this video. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't yet. Give it a thumbs up, and I will see you next time.